Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Apologies for yesterday. I was in and out of the office, couldn't get the podcast off the ground. I thoroughly enjoyed a very vibrant and always erudite conversation on Debal's morning AM live NTV show. And on the panel was Mike Eldon, Phyllis Wakiaga, Patrick Obarth, Gabriel Nagati of the African Development Bank, and myself. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Lots of interesting discussions. One was post-Safaricom sustainability report about gender inequality. And I was saying, if you haven't got women participating in the economy, it's like fighting with one hand tied behind your back. Macro thoughts, Puerto Rican bonds getting clobbered after those Trump comments about wiping out the debt were rebutted. We saw a sharp fall down. And look at this, Spain's IBEX extends its underperformance versus Germany's DAX as fallout from the Catalonian referendum continued to rattle markets. And, the velocity of the move is in favor of Catalonia, in my view, and imports a great deal of uncertainty into the heart of the European project. And therefore, my view is that the euro should be trading lower, down as low as 114.50. Home thoughts, I like this study for homage to the square. Oil and graphite on blotting paper, apparently. This quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald: I suppose all great happiness is a little sad. Beauty means the scent of roses and then the death of roses. I like this from Finch Hatton's incredible sighting of these cheetahs at Savo National Park. Happy World Animal Day. Really have to show you a lot of video footage, but we had a wonderful time. Happy 25th wedding anniversary, Barack Obama. A quarter of a century later, you're still my best friend and the most extraordinary man I know. I love you, from Michelle Obama. My weekend piece quoted T.S. Eliot: between the idea and the reality, between the motion and the act, falls the shadow. And finally, leave you with a photograph of elephants taken by Sachin Rai. We spent our last evening at the marshes of Apiceli, which attract herds of elephants. This photograph was shot on an iPhone 6. Let's move on to political reflections. President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is seen in this photograph with President Hassan Rouhani of Iran. They held a joint press conference. This is largely, I think, what's brought them together is the issue of Kurdistan. But I think at the same time they're declaring a truce in Syria and giving Erdogan a way to step back. And in the second photograph, you see the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, receiving Turkey's President Erdogan. Further afield, Saudi King Salman arrived in Moscow for the first ever visit by a Saudi monarch. The picture that you're seeing was taken by the royal photographer. And this speaks to an article I wrote in October 2015 about how Putin is a geopolitical grandmaster and a player once more. And I was talking in 2015 about how Putin had been on the back foot big time. The body language between Putin and Obama, I said, was an avenue worthy of study. Obama has a barely concealed, evidently visceral dislike of Putin. You see this in the frozen handshakes and a number of other interactions. But I was talking about Unga in 2015, where Putin set out his stall, and I quote, I cannot help asking those who have caused the situation, do you realize now what you have done? With hundreds of thousands of refugees entering Europe, his question was a sharp one. Within 24 hours of delivering that speech, Russia instructed that the US should vacate Syrian airspace. This message was not delivered to Ashton Carter by his Russian counterpart Shoigu. It was delivered to the US Embassy in Baghdad, and pretty soon after that message was delivered, Russia began its intervention on the side of President Bashar al-Assad of Syria. That was a decisive intervention, as we can see. Even Erdogan is suing for peace now. I said then you could hear the squealing start immediately from Ankara to Riyadh, from the GCC to Washington. All these capitals have assets on the ground in Syria. And what is clear is that Russia is not making a distinction between IS or the moderate opposition fighting Assad, which really means our terrorists. Lavrov famously said, if it looks like a terrorist, if it acts like a terrorist, if it walks like a terrorist, if it fights like a terrorist, it's a terrorist, right? And I said Putin fancies himself the flycatcher in Syria, the fly trap, and I was talking about the speed of execution confirms that Russia is once again a geopolitical actor. That will have to be considered. It's a breathtaking rebound. And then I wrote another piece in December 2016 about the parabolic rebound of Putin. Just from those photos you can see what I'm talking about. Russia's Zapad military exercise offers lessons for NATO, says Bloomberg View. Putin also held talks with President of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, in the Kremlin. And Iraqi forces announced that they've retaken the center of Hawija from ISIL. And on that note, Haider al-Abadi paid a visit to Emmanuel Macron at the Élysée Palace in France. So, although the visuals are what you're essentially seeing is that Russia's inserted itself into the mix, go back to that UNGA for the moment of intervention. It's a pretty dramatic geopolitical rebound in my view, which I was kind of predicting. Lamenting Las Vegas massacre, Questlove calls out politicians who have accepted NRA donations. That's the point, isn't it? Tillerson apparently called Trump a moron. Trump on the report of the Secretary of State calling him a moron, which Tillerson didn't deny. I'm very honoured by his comments. Fake news made up by NBC. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump are seen boarding an Air Force One for Las Vegas. Imagine if WikiLeaks had posted Ivanka and Don Jr.'s emails every day for the final 4 weeks of the campaign. That's the point. David Korn. Hi, Boris Johnson. I gave Theresa her P45 just like you asked. This is the big flagship speech, which went horribly wrong for Theresa May. Puigdemont says Catalan government is to apply the referendum result. Those stopped short of saying how or when he would trigger the process to leave Spain. Speaking in a televised statement on Wednesday night, Puigdemont reiterated an offer for mediated talks. King Felipe on Tuesday joined Prime Minister Mariano Rajoy in condemning the vote, causing outrage among many Catalans. The European Union has backed Madrid in the biggest constitutional crisis since the 1970s. We will show our best face in coming days when our institutions apply the results of the referendum, Puigdemont said. Spain spread over Germany. You can see that's blown out. Catalonia to South Sudan, a world of separatist movements. Interesting article in DW News. A North Korean nuclear strike on Tokyo and Seoul would kill an estimated 2.1 million people. And this was the point I was making in my piece in September, when I said 10 million folks in Seoul, just 60 kilometers from the border, 28,500 US soldiers are all in the line of fire. The piece was called "The Screaming Comes Across the Sky," and I said, when you view things from Kim the Rocket Man's perspective, you might appreciate that far from being illogical, he is in fact being ruthlessly logical, and he is speaking the language his adversaries understand lucidly. I like to photograph devotees at Dhanushkodi Beach on the tip of an island in India. Read the stories from the New York Times. Dollar VIX up 41% since the August low. That's interesting. That's the stalwart. Goldman Sachs have agreed to rent new offices in Frankfurt as part of its Brexit plans. US services sector activity surged to a 12-year high as August ICN jumps to 59.8. to the fourth highest on record. Let's move on to the currency markets. Currency markets, euro dollar 117.70. Dollar index just below the 93.50 level, 93.47. Japanese yen 112.63. Swiss franc 0.9754. The pound 132. The figure. Australian dollar 0.7831. India rupee 65.145. South Korean won 1140.83. So that's a bit softer than where it's been. Brazilian real 313.48, Egyptian pound 17.6725, and South African rand 13.6173. Dollar index right at that sort of 93.50 level about which I've spoken severally. I expect to move over there towards 95. Euro dollar currently at 117.70. My target is 114.50, and that's on an increased political risk, which I don't think has been baked into the price so far. Commodity markets, gold, this is from triple leverage, just a warning, until this channel is broken, we're in a downtrend. We're currently trading at 1276.66. Crude oil futures settled just below $50 a barrel at $49.98. We're currently at $50.36. Brent crude, this is at an interesting juncture, just around the $56 a barrel. This is from T Commodities, getting bullish about it at these levels, but I think it's it's a finely balanced thing. I mean, we're either going to drop $2 big time, or we're going to rally $2. I can't work it out which one we're going to do. But in the case of Brent crude, looking at the chart at 56, I remember it being at 62.50 just about 2 years ago, and I think we might, that's where we could go if the rebound gathers momentum. 3 US Army special, but overall actually the jury's out. I wouldn't want to put a lot of money on the table. 3 US Army special operations commanders were killed in Niger. The officials said the 2 wounded were taken to Niamey in a stable condition. The officials were not authorized to discuss the incident. US Special Operations Commanders. They were Green Berets, were likely attacked by Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. US expected to end sanctions on Sudan. This was a final demand to break off relations with North Korea, which they've done apparently. It's been coming for a while, in point of fact. Go Kabila Go, new effort to oust DR Congo president despite fear of violence. Opposition leaders in the Democratic Republic of the Congo have called for a new effort to oust President Kabila, who has yet to set dates for elections in the vast Central African state despite his second term expiring 9 months ago. The people are tired, said Martin Fayulu. The government shut down protests in December. Its message is simple: if you demonstrate, we will shoot you. But it has done that in the past. Fayulu is a brave man. But when was he last able to get more than 500 people on the streets? The opposition has not put a ding in the Congolese government. And this goes back to that quote about the street via Paul Virilio. And for now, Kabila owns the street and has not been seriously challenged. Zimbabweans just don't trust the system, says the central bank governor. You can say that again. Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe Governor John Manduya on Wednesday told a meeting of business leaders that the country was generating sufficient foreign currency but was suffering from lack of confidence in the financial system. He said Zimbabwe generated $4 billion in foreign currency receipts between January and September. 2 months back, he said the country had received $2.8 billion in foreign currency receipts in the first half to June, admitting that it was no small change. There is a mismatch in the economy. There's a huge appetite for forex, but not all the demand is good, he said. Call the shortages artificial and urged consumers to resist the price increases. The panic buying caused artificial demand and it made people increase prices because they saw an opportunity to make money. They now need to be reasonable and reduce prices to where they were. Just do not buy. We need to educate the consumer to resist. If you do not buy the cooking oil at $5, he said, they will go out of business overnight. Interesting. President Magufuli earns a salary of just $4,000 per month. And it's the lowest salary, I think, in Africa. They can leave if they don't want it, he said. He said abuse of public funds was rampant at state firms, and he had rejected requests from some local officials to more than double their allowances, saying he could not do so while so many citizens lack access to water, healthcare, and electricity. He says the right things, but the jury's out as to his real level of success, or whether it's just a one-man sort of PR exercise. Critic of Rwandan president charged with insurrection. Prosecutor's spokesman Dame Shima Rwigara, a critic of President Kagame, was barred from challenging in elections in August, has been charged with inciting insurrection against the state and forgery, the public prosecutor's spokesman said on Wednesday. Her sister and her mother have also been charged with incitement, discrimination, and sectarianism. I like this photograph. Rwanda dance for more than 3,000 years, more than dance, spirituality, inner connection with the cosmic, with creation. That's from Al Contact. South African all shares up 12.04% this year, and if I'm not mistaken, that's a new record high. Dollar versus rand were around these 1360 levels. I'll put up a 6-month chart. Egyptian pound versus the dollar, 17.6765. Between December 2013 and April 2017, the Central Bank of Nigeria's claims on the federal government went from $1.8 billion to $17.3 billion, an almost tenfold rise. And essentially what they've been doing is it's been a huge program of quantitative easing. And that's why, in my view, the currency has got to still adjust lower, I'm afraid. Nigerian all shares up 31.57% year-to-date. Ghana Stock Exchange is up 35.77% year-to-date. Will the island of Madagascar be quarantined? Uncontained widespread bubonic plague outbreak kills 24 in 20 towns. Highly contagious, says WHO. Front pages, Fingers Lives as government's $3 billion deficit in Zimbabwe was accumulated over just 3 years is behind the current cash crisis and rising inflation. Kenya, the Kenya Defense Forces tweeted this photograph of the Commander-in-Chief, President Kenyatta, on board his ceremonial vehicle opening the agricultural show. Rhino Dinga said there is no agreement between us and the IEBC. We have sent to the IEBC a very concise document outlining what went wrong and what we want to see rectified before we go for these repeat elections, he said. As I previously said, I think, they're not serious about campaigning. Cash is tough. You've campaigned over one campaign. The money, people are weary, they're not going to pony up the cash, so that's why you've got the sort of press conference, asymmetric strategy of tension, sending people onto the streets. But I think, the nuclear option is to boycott those elections, which I think they will do, and then degrade it. The market Stanbic Kenya Purchaser Managers Index fell to 40.9 from 42 in August, the lowest reading since the data series began in January 2014. It's been hitting lows pretty regularly. But flat is 50, so this is a very low. It means the economy is contracting. Moody's have placed on review for downgrade the ratings of 3 Kenyan banks. That's because they've downgraded the rating of the sovereign, and that automatically is the cap for the banks. They're talking about, it was primarily driven by potential weakening of Kenya government's credit profile, particularly the country's fiscal strength, liquidity risk. The link is there if you're interested in taking a deeper look. Bob Collymore, we won't be intimidated, referring to claims by NASA of Saharan colluding with the government of the day, which I don't think are credible. In my interview this morning on NTBS, I don't write Kenya off. We're more diverse, innovative, entrepreneurial. I said we're going to have a big, huge e-commerce component in our economy, and that could happen overnight. Patrick was talking about how Kenya is a very disrupted economy. The pace of change is so high, that's true. Nakumatt, I was pretty outspoken. I said the game is over. The only question is who's going to pronounce the last rites. Take a look at my video from this morning when I said Tuskers would be mentally insane to think of taking on Nakumatt's huge debt. Nairobi all shares up 21.16% year to date. NSE 20 fell over 1% yesterday. That's up 15.87% year to date. Once again, thank you for stopping by.